Hey guys, this is lesson 5.3. Sorry this isn't a standard recording. For whatever reason, it didn't actually record during class. The goal here is that you can remember and use the distance formula to calculate the length of a line segment. Basically, this question here says, can we figure out what the distance is between the coordinates -2, 1 and 3, 4? So -2, 1, if we graph that, is right here. And then 3, 4, if we graph that, is right here. So the question is, how far apart are these two? Well, if we were to drop that blue dot down to here, and then simply count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we could easily say that the distance between them is 5 units. But it has been stretched from this spot up to the blue dot where it's at. So it's going to be a little bit longer than 5 units. Now, as you can imagine, sometimes it's nice to have a perfect distance, like an exact distance. So we don't want to always just say a little bit longer than or a little bit shorter than. So what you also might notice is I have drawn a triangle here. And in fact, if I color this in, you can see it's a right triangle. What we've been doing is we've been doing the Pythagorean theorem, which says a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And that's essentially what we're going to be using to find the distance is we want to find c squared. We want to find c. We want to find this distance. So normally what we would do is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And that would tell us we could use that to find c. And then at the end, remember our last step would always be to square root. So we would square root whatever a squared plus b squared equals, and that would give us c. Now, what you also notice here is we can easily count again. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this is 3 units. So we could go 5 squared plus 3 squared equals c squared. But if you square root that, then you get the square root of 25 plus 9, which is 34. Okay, so that was really messy. We don't always have a picture, but that's where this is coming from, is we're finding the distance between those 2 points. So here's the general formula. So let's pretend we didn't have a picture and we didn't have a coordinate grid and that this didn't necessarily make sense to us. And instead, we just had to go off of the coordinates we were given. So we can use this method without a graph if we have the distance formula, which is right here. It says d equals the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. So x2 and x1 is saying like the first x and the second x. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to call this x1 and this y1, and I'm going to call this x2 and y2. This means that my first x and y, my second x and y. And then what we're going to do is just fill in the gaps. So the first thing we need to do is write out what x2 is. Well, x2 is right here. It's 3 minus x1, which is -2, squared plus parenthesis y2. Y2 is right here. This is 4, my second y. Minus y1 is 1. Okay, I'm going to close that and square it. So now, 3 minus -2, if we do this on a calculator, 3 minus -2, that becomes 5. So as you can see, what that ends up actually being is 3 plus 2. So I'm just going to write that one extra step. Minus a negative is like plus. So 3 plus 2 is 5 squared, plus 4 minus 1 is 3 squared. And here we get 5 squared is 25. 3 squared is 9. And then we need to do 25 plus 9, which is 34. So we have 25 plus 9, which is the square root of 34. So on the quiz, it'll ask for the radical, and that's what it's asking for. It's just that initial solution that you come up with. Then it'll ask for the simplified radical. And this is what we were doing before, where we had our perfect squares, 1 times 1, 2 times 2, 3 times 3, 4 times 4, 5 times 5, 6 times 6, etc. Well, we would start by dividing by 25 here because 34 is closest to 25. So 34 divided by 25 is no good. 34 divided by 16 is next. Nope. Oops. Still nope. 34 divided by 9. No. 34 divided by 4. No. 34 divided by 1 would work, but it wouldn't change anything. So that means the simplified radical is still square root 34. And then the approximation is asking for about how much is it actually. It's kind of like up here, how we said it's a little longer than 5 units. Well, they want to know how much. So we can do square root 34, and we get 5.830. 5.8309. 5.8309. So on the quiz, I believe I asked for the tenths place, which is right here. So you need to look there. Because that's not 5 or greater, this is going to stay as 5.8. So that's going to be your approximation. All right. In this one, I'm going to start off the same way. I'm just going to call this x1, y1. And I'm going to call this x2, y2. So my first x and my first y. So we start by substituting our numbers. I'm going to put up the skeleton there. So we're going to do x2, which is 4 minus x1. And x1 is 2. And then we're going to do plus y2 is 2 minus y1 is 6. So then what you'll get is 4 minus 2 is 2 squared, plus 2 minus 6 is negative 4 squared. Here's where you got to be careful. If you type negative 4 squared into your calculator, it's going to say negative 16. That's wrong. What negative 4 squared actually means is negative 4 times negative 4. Oops. Which is 16. Or negative 4, sorry, my pen is not being very responsive. Negative 4 squared, which is 16. The point is it should always be positive, okay? So you'll notice I always write things in parentheses because if you type it in the calculator that way, it will work out fine. So we get 4 plus 16, and that equals 20. So that's our radical. And then the simplified radical, again, 1, 4, 9, 16, 25. We'll start with 16 because it's closest to 20. 20 divided by 9. Nope. 20 divided by 4. That one works. So instead of 20, we are going to rewrite 20 as the square root of 4 times 5 and split that. Square root of 4 is 2 because it's the second number in the list. So it's 2 square root of 5. That is your simplified radical. And then the approximation is what you put in the calculator. So you could put square root 20, or you could put 2 square root 5. Either way, you're going to end up with that same amount. And if I want you to go to one decimal spot, then you need to look at this one and it's going to make this into 4.5. So that's your approximation. All right, I would suggest you pause the video here. I want you to pause the video and try to set up the equation for this one, okay? So I want you to pause the video and set up the equation. I just want this first step right here. Okay, so there are two ways that you guys may have done this if you pause the video to watch, and I'm going to show you both. Okay, so you may have done 6 minus negative 2, which becomes plus 2, and then 1 minus 3. That becomes 8 squared plus negative 2 squared, which 8 squared is 8 times 8, which is 64. And then 2 squared, negative 2 squared is 4. So we get square root 68, okay? The other way you might have done this is you might have just reversed it. So you may have gone negative 2 minus 6. So this one minus this one. That's often what I do. I just put a minus sign between them. If you don't want to do that, that's okay. But then I would have to go 3 minus 1. So then what happens is you get negative 8 squared plus 3 minus 1 is 2 squared. Negative 8 squared means negative 8 times negative 8, which is 64. Plus 2 squared means 2 times 2, which is 4. And then again, we get square root 68. So it doesn't matter which direction you go, as long as you go the same direction for both. So our radical is square root 68. And our simplified radical is 1, 4, 9, 16, 25. We'll start with 64. So we'll do 68 divided by 64. Nope. 68 divided by 49. Nope. 68 divided by 36. 68 divided by 25. 68 divided by 16. Nope. 68 divided by 9. No. 68 divided by 4. Okay, so that one. 68 is going to change into 4 times 17. So we'll do that, and then we'll split it. What is the square root of 4? It's 2. Square root 17. So that's your simplified radical. And then the approximation is what is it as a decimal. So you could do square root of 68, or you could do 2 square root 17. Either way, you get this decimal. So if you want this one, you need to look at that guy. This is going to stay 8.2. That's your approximation. All right, so we did not do this one. Just wanted you to get familiar with the formula. So I'll do this one just to go through quick. And you can ask whatever questions you have during class, and I'll do it like one color at a time. So I'll do each line a different color so you can ask me where they came from. So what I'm going to do is 3 plus 5 squared plus negative 4 minus 2 squared. Real quick note, this became plus 5 because it was minus a negative 5. Okay. I need to change the color and make this orange. So then we get 8 squared plus negative 6 squared. We got green. This is going to become 64 plus 36. Black is going to become square root 100. And then red, this is 10. So the radical is 10. The simplified radical is 10. And the approximation is 10. Square root of 100 is just 10. So don't do too much. Like, don't do extra. Like, just these are all 10. You don't need to make it hard. If it's a nice number, it's a nice number. Okay? All right, so that's all I have for you for this one. go ahead and do the 5.3 quiz at this point. Feel free to rewatch this video if you need to.